2 Chronicles Chapter 32. After these events and their establishment, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, came and entered Judah. He encamped against the fortified cities, intending to conquer them for himself. When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come with the intention to fight against Jerusalem, he consulted with his princes and mighty men. They decided to obstruct the water sources outside the city, and their efforts were successful. A large gathering of people was assembled, and they stopped all the fountains and the brook that flowed through the land, fearing that the kings of Assyria would find ample water. Hezekiah also fortified the city further by rebuilding the broken wall and extending it to the towers. He constructed an additional outer wall and repaired the Millo in the city of David. Darts and shields were produced in abundance. Hezekiah appointed military captains over the people and gathered them in the street of the city gate. He addressed them with comforting words, encouraging them not to fear the king of Assyria or the multitude accompanying him. He reminded them that they had more support from the Lord their God than their adversaries. Hezekiah emphasized that the king of Assyria relied on human strength, but they had the Lord their God to help them and fight their battles. The people found reassurance in Hezekiah's words, and their trust was placed in the Lord. Afterward, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, sent his representatives to Jerusalem, while he himself laid siege to Lachish, with all his forces. Sennacherib's messengers conveyed a message to Hezekiah, the king of Judah, and to all Judah in Jerusalem. They questioned the basis of their trust, as they were enduring a siege in Jerusalem. They suggested that Hezekiah was leading them to perish from famine and thirst, falsely claiming that the Lord would not deliver them from the hand of the king of Assyria. They accused Hezekiah of removing the high places and altars in Judah and Jerusalem, instructing the people to worship before a single altar and burn incense upon it. Sennacherib's envoys pointed out that the gods of other nations were unable to save their lands from Assyria's conquest, insinuating that the Lord of Judah would be equally powerless. They urged the people not to be deceived by Hezekiah and not to trust in their God, asserting that no god from any nation or kingdom had ever delivered their people from Assyria's hand. The servants of Sennacherib spoke even more against the Lord God and against his servant Hezekiah. They wrote letters railing against the Lord God of Israel and speaking against him, suggesting that Hezekiah's God was incapable of delivering his people. They cried out loudly in the language of the Jews to the people of Jerusalem on the wall, attempting to frighten and trouble them, hoping to seize the city. They spoke against the God of Jerusalem, comparing him to the gods of other nations, which were merely the work of human hands. In response, Hezekiah, the king, and the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amoz, prayed and cried out to heaven. The Lord sent an angel who struck down all the mighty men of valor, the leaders, and captains in the camp of the king of Assyria. Sennacherib returned to his own land in shame. When he entered the house of his God, his own sons killed him there with a sword. In this way, the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, as well as from other threats, guiding and protecting them on every side. Many people brought gifts to the Lord in Jerusalem and presented offerings to Hezekiah, the king of Judah, which greatly magnified his reputation among all nations from that point on. During those days, Hezekiah fell seriously ill and prayed to the Lord, who spoke to him and gave him a sign. However, Hezekiah did not show gratitude in return for the benefits he received. His heart became prideful, and as a result, the Lord's wrath was upon him, as well as upon Judah and Jerusalem. Yet, Hezekiah eventually humbled himself and sought forgiveness for the pride in his heart, along with the inhabitants of Jerusalem. This act of contrition spared them from the Lord's wrath during Hezekiah's reign. Hezekiah accumulated great riches and honor. He established treasuries for silver, gold, precious stones, spices, shields, and all kinds of precious items. He also provided storehouses for an abundance of grain, wine, oil, and shelter for various livestock. Hezekiah acquired numerous cities and possessions of flocks and herds in abundance, as God had blessed him with substantial wealth. Hezekiah initiated a project to divert the upper watercourse of Gihon and redirected it to the west side of the city of David. In all his endeavors, Hezekiah prospered. However, during a diplomatic exchange with the ambassadors of the princes of Babylon, who sought to inquire about the marvel that had occurred in the land, God left Hezekiah to test him and to reveal what was in his heart. The remaining details of Hezekiah's reign and his goodness can be found in the vision of Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, and in the books of the kings of Judah and Israel. Hezekiah passed away and was buried in the most prominent tombs of the sons of David. All of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem honored him at his death, and his son Manasseh succeeded him as king.